Hello, I'm Pastor Tim Holscher, and thank you for joining me. I'm continuing here in Romans chapter 12 as we're looking at some different attitudes and activities that I would suggest maturing and stable believers can be exercising to help believers that lack stability become stable. Now, God is going to be the one that stabilizes them, but we can do things that promote that stability and contribute to what God's doing rather than becoming part of the problem. And so we pick up with verse 14, where Paul says, "Bless those who persecute you, bless and do not curse." Now, the word that he uses for bless here, eulogeo, is a word meaning to say good things about. And way back in March, when I was introducing some studies on being in Christ, we looked at this word in Ephesians 1:3 because that's how I am in Christ. God counts me to be in Christ, and he says all these good things about me. He says I'm holy. He says I'm without blame. He says I'm forgiven. He says that I'm redeemed. He says that I'm seated in Christ, that I'm dead with Christ, and so on and so forth. All these many things. That's how I'm there, because God says these good things about us in Christ. And Paul calls us to say good things to those who are persecuting us. And this word persecute, we talked about this yesterday. This is the same word. If we just go back to verse 13, share in the needs of the saints, pursue hospitality. And that word pursue, if you see over here, you look at these two words here in the Greek, you can see you're really talking, it's the same word. It's two different participial forms, because here it's who we're supposed to be in this way. We're supposed to be pursuing, and this is talking about other ones that are pursuing us. Because that word persecute literally means they're pursuing you. But obviously here it's with the negative intention of causing you grief, hurting you, maybe verbally, maybe hurting you physically. So he says, bless those that are persecuting you, those that are chasing you down and trying to cause you misery in various ways. And he says, bless or say good things about, and do not curse. Now, when he's talking about cursing here, he's not talking about swearing so much as calling down from God would be the idea of some sort of a judgment from God, to bring a curse on them. Think about it. This is a good illustration that if a person gets really mad at another individual and they say, "God damn you," they're actually saying, "God judge you. God bring you into severe judgment." That's literally what that statement means. It's a statement that a person says out of anger because they want God to judge them. Now, most people today, they just say it out of anger and they're not really thinking about what it means, other than the fact that it's a expression they've learned to associate with being hostile or angry towards somebody else. But that's what's happening. And you could do that. You could set up an example before these immature believers that's the way you respond to problems, is you call down God's judgment on people, and that's not going to encourage stability on them. Because when you turn to your own human anger and the way you respond to things, it encourages them to do the same. And let's put it this way, when you start down that path, it's real easy to just keep going and keep going and keep going. And next thing you know, now you're doing something that's really off the rails. And if you're an immature, unstable believer, that'll really rattle you, and you'll wonder if it has damaged your relationship with God. And therefore, you as a mature, stable believer should set an example for them of responding like this, not setting an example of spewing out hostile statements. James makes this statement over here, "From the same mouth goes forth or comes both blessing and cursing. My brethren, these things ought not to be this way. Does a fountain or a spring of water send up from the same opening fresh or water that's good to drink and bitter or poisonous water?" Could you imagine if you went to a spring to get your water and you didn't know from one day to the next whether the water was poison or safe to drink? Well, people come to you, and one day you're saying good things about people in Christ, and the next day you're calling down curses on them, and you're cursing, you're saying harsh things. People are going to go, is this person a good place to get information? Is this a good way to go? I think Christians, and I just really encourage you as believers to think seriously. We're really, as believers today, we really are damaging our testimony and our witness by the way we are responding to a lot of events right now here in our country, I'm talking about the United States if you're not from here, if you think about the way we're responding to the COVID-19 thing and the way we just spew venom against all these people that want you to take measures, and we don't want to do those things, and we do that, against the way the election has gone, things like that, or prior to the election, maybe as we were looking one way or another, but whatever it is. And I think we're really ruining our testimony, because people should be coming to us and they should be seeing us defined by love, as Christ said over in John 13:34, and instead they see us as, oh, we say a good thing about God, but over here, man, we're spewing all this venom, curses. Is this what should be characterizing us? Should not be characterizing us. I don't see this in Paul or Peter or John, that this is the way that they responded to the world. In fact, Paul says here in 1 Corinthians 4 about himself, he says, we toil, work within our own hands, and when we are reviled or insulted, we bless, same word. And when we're persecuted, we put up with it. We don't turn around and give tit for tat. We bless when we're insulted. And Peter says the same thing in 1 Peter 3 verse 9. He says, don't repay evil for evil. See, we justify that. When we act like that, when we pay evil for evil, how are we any different than a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old or a 5-year-old that the one kid hits them and so I get to hit you back? We're like, is that the way we respond? Or insult for insult? Somebody insults us, we feel like we have to insult them in return. On the contrary, he says, repay evil with, same word we're looking at, with blessing. Peter says that's the way we should be responding to these things. Paul says we should be responding like this. James says that this is the way that we ought to be. What does it take for us to get through our heads? We need to really think carefully about how we use our mouths as believers, and in particular, how the use of our mouth can affect the maturity and the stability of other believers, of those who lack that stability, who lack that maturity. And we're setting such a poor example for them by the way that we spew this venom. It doesn't work. It's not good. It's not healthy for them. And to be honest, it's not healthy for us, because it's training them to respond no different than the world responds. And that's not a testimony I think that we would want to have. And it certainly isn't going to help them in becoming stable, because they're going to recognize that their character at one point or another really is coming short in the way they're becoming so wrapped up in the world system, in its events, and all the stuff going on with that. And then they're going to, did this ruin my relationship with God? Has this damaged my relationship with God? You understand? You kind of get that? How this would play against stability? Because I not only want you to have a good day in the Lord, but I want you to be one that can be helping others also, encouraging them, especially those who lack this stability, for them to be able to have a good day in the Lord. Thank you so much for joining me today.